Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 71 of the WatchRolling podcast. The WatchRolling podcast is a veteran owned podcast that focuses on horology from a veteran's point of view, as well as brings valuable veteran resources to the watch enthusiast community. My name is Jason. I'm your host. If you're new to the pod, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. The Watch Rolling podcast is brought to you by the Anti Watch Watch Club. The Anti Watch Watch Club is a 501c3 charitable organization that utilizes a drop style culture with all kinds of cool stuff like the flag behind me t shirts, Nalgene bottles, the whole nine. And they take all the proceeds and basically provide veteran, Leo, first responder organizations with charitable donations. And they do quite a lot. I invite you to go look at antiwatchclub.org, check out their website, and see all the stuff they do. There's really just a ton of stuff they do. The products are great, t-shirts are great, hoodies, you name it, and it all goes to help some very important communities, which I support and I appreciate. So the Watch One podcast is also brought to you by Mushi Watch Straps. Mushi Watch Straps is a veteran-owned business. The folk that provides well-priced and fairly priced NATO straps, watch rolls, you name it, all kinds of stuff, watch accessories, and they do so at a fair price. So check them out at mushiwatchstraps.com. My personal favorite is their Mushi nylon strap, especially gray, 20 millimeter. Oh man, it's fantastic. It's a perfect frame for any watch you wear. And their tan canvas watch rolls that are suede lined. Awesome, like 29 bucks. Greatest thing you're ever going to get. But today's episode 71, is a pretty cool episode. It's going to be an interview with Jake from gridbase.net. Gridbase.net is a pretty cool site that offers some pretty cool products. And I don't want to like bury the lead and kind of like steal Jake's thunder so he could talk about his company, but it's pretty sweet. And I invite you to check it out. So without further ado, let's get Jake on and welcome to the show. Hey Jake, welcome to the Watch Rolling Podcast. How you doing?
Howdy, how are you? I really appreciate that intro. It was a great intro.
Oh,
And
nice, man.
yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, sometimes I have intros and I'm like, man, like the thing that the person's going to talk about is so cool. Like I don't want to steal their thunder because if I've learned one thing from interviewing 101, it's that you need to let the guest's personality come out and their passion for their stuff come out. So on that topic, Jake,
Yeah.
um, let's do this first because I will always forget.
Okay.
What do you have on your wrist today?
So today I have a palm dial. Well, it's kind of it's a Rolex wannabe. It's from Watch Mods in Australia, but I actually got it secondhand from Justin over at Recon Team Watch Blog.
Oh, nice.
I ride over there for him, and of course, he's been a buddy for a long time, and he and I really fell in love with watches at the same time. But there's a palm dial Seiko mod with fluted bezel and a little 7 link bracelet, and that's what I have on now. But typically, you'll see me with a G-Shock or something like that,
Awesome.
or like I was showing you earlier, a little fossil watch pickup that I find here and there. It really just depends. I like to get up and show out. I've never been to a family function dressed casually. I like very high end dress with legitimate suspenders and nice coats and high tailored pants with strong waistlines. And I'm a big fan of like 50s men's fashion. So a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
my watches are small dials. Like if you look back at men's fashion during that era, men wore more smaller dials.
Yeah.
On a lot of watches, and even some of the old like Rolex Datejust and stuff like that are just really really small, and I like that. I like that look. So a lot of the times I'm wearing whatever fits the occasion. If I'm getting into something, we'll get a G-Shock, or if we're doing it to the nines, then it's going to be a Seiko LaSalle or something of that
Yeah.
nature. But
That LaSalle's
yeah,
sweet, man. It's
thank
really
you, man.
cool.
Yeah,
Really
for
cool.
anyone unfamiliar, go check out the Seiko LaSalles. You can find some crazy deals on them.
Yeah. I mean, we've only spoken twice, and I already know that I need to take a vacation to Texas to go to thrift stores because I'm like, here in Virginia, there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, maybe I should go west, but there's nothing out here I've seen that's cool. But
Well, in the South, there's like in the South now for sure still, but especially in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there was a lot of money. First of all, in Texas, people who had family ranches for years and years and years were selling them off, trading it for oil wells, had a ton of cattle. DFW's expanded tremendously in the last 20 or 30 years, and there's been a lot of people that financially benefited from that. And Texas, if you've ever seen the show Dallas,
yeah,
is kind of a gaudy belt buckle rhinestone. There's a company called Bolin Made that's based out of Texas, and they made all of John Wayne's belt buckles. There's something about Texas in particular. Boss Hogg's Cadillac. diamond gold nugget rings, where
Yeah.
people just like had this kind of flash to them. So you had these country boys who grew up poor and could never afford anything, and now they just sold 10 acres of their 1,000 and made, millions or whatever. And so they went out and they got themselves a gold nugget Texas ring, and they got them and their wives a nice watch or whatever. And a lot of this stuff has fallen by the wayside, not interested by the prior generations. And so it ends up in these little, country town uh, little thrift stores and stuff like that. And people don't have any context for what it is, or, I mean, certainly some do. There's absolutely some good jewelers here in Texas as well. But a lot of this stuff ends up in the hands of people who just have no context or appreciation for what it is they're looking at. And it's from a bygone era, so to speak. But if you know what you're looking for and you like gold, because it seems like a lot of old Texas stuff you find is like gold and gaudy. So if you like gold, gaudy, kind of flashy, big time Texas, it's type of stuff, you'll find it, no doubt. But I think that's another reason. The weather, keeping everything good and in shape and all of that
Yeah.
down here, but also just kind of like where we're at in time now. Now all the heirlooms are in the hands of the kids, and it's transitioning, and people are doing estate sales, and so stuff just kind of ends up, around. It's a good time for it's a good time for radio for one, and it's a good time for watches and things like that because radio is similar too. Bunch of old heads getting rid of old radio gear and stuff.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, 'cause, I'm from Southern California, so, like, cars are a big thing when I was growing up
Oh
because the
yeah,
weather's so nice. You could just find beautiful cars
yeah,
that have been well maintained, and there's not a lot of a lot of rain, not a lot of snow and salt and all that stuff, so
right.
I know what you mean by that, but, do you have anything in your cup? Sometimes we do a cup check. You don't have to if you don't want to.
I just finished a fireman's four. Uh, there's a little bit left in there. We'll kill it.
Mm. I got a nice Cabernet Sauvignon.
Very nice.
My wife was nice enough to pour me 'cause, basically came straight from work here, and then on my wrist tonight, I have my Mule Glashuta 10th anniversary SAR timer.
Mm.
Thing's a beefy boy.
Hey man, since our last conversation, they dropped the official Jack Mason Dr Pepper release. Did you see it?
Yeah, I was hoping we
Yeah,
were gonna talk about that.
yeah.
So,
Well, I just saw it today. It's
so
cool.
let's get your hot take on it.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. I think I told you that previously, and I know I've talked to Justin about it too, that like my first impression of Jack Mason was not, I didn't know they were a Texas brand. I just knew it was a beautiful watch, specifically the Stratatimer. And after the Intersect episode that he did with Army and Time, I was listening to it, went and looked, and then like later found out that it was a Texas brand. But,
Yeah,
I'm not interested in the brand because I'm a Texan. If anything, the brand has made me more proud of Texas. It's kind of the other way
yeah.
around where I'm like, oh, cool. What's next? A Whataburger watch? We're gonna do an orange one. Just kind of keep going down the road here. But anyway, I think it's I've never held one in person, so I'm excited to get the opportunity to do that. I do not think that I will have the money on hand to pick up the Dr. Pepper, but I fully intend to pick one up secondhand. Right now, I'm right in between like a $1,400 radio and or I could do a $1,400 watch, which I think it's actually coming out at like 130 or 1,030 or something like that is what I saw. But I got to do the radio just because it's what's good for the business. But in another world, I would love to do both, and I would absolutely be picking one of those up, and I'm sure I'll be able to get one secondhand. Even if it's not the Dr. Pepper version, though, just the Stratatimer in general is just absolutely gorgeous in any colorway. And I love, dude. I zoomed in to see if they were going to do the 23 on the date because I kind of had a feeling that that's what it was
Mhm.
going to be, for the 23 flavors, and they nailed it with that, of course. So,
Yeah,
and then as a business owner, I was looking at it like, okay, they're going to do 230 of them. That's cool, right? 23. And then it's going to be 1,000. I'm like, they're going to make 230 grand off that watch, like, because it's going to sell out, no
oh,
doubt.
yeah.
It's going to sell out, right? And then I was like, what is the cost on that watch? I need to be into watches, not radios, because man, if you could generate enough hype and build a quality enough product from a business standpoint, wow, to have a $250,000 payday in probably a weekend,
Yeah,
that's just an incredible business model. But they deserve all the success that they're getting because just from what I've seen and what I've heard, it's rare to find a product that's that quality, made in America, specifically made in Texas, and yeah, congrats to all those guys. 'Cause I love seeing excellent stuff. There's not enough excellent stuff these days in general. So seeing excellent stuff like that, excellent execution in the branding and the marketing, honing in on who their customer is, being loyal to that customer, putting out such a quality product. my hat's off to them from every angle and every standpoint, man. It's just so cool.
Yeah, I told Justin, I said, "Hey, next year I'm gonna skip wind up and I'm gonna go to Intersect in Dallas
Oh,
because I'd
that'll
like
be
to be able
awesome.
to see." Yeah, I'd like to be able to see. I mean, I can see Jack Mason anywhere, but it's kind of.
Sure.
I think it's a little bit different, like in their hometown, right? Like you're in their
Totally.
back of the neck of the woods, and um, because I'm pretty sure like walking around New York for anybody is a little can make you a little give you the heebie-jeebies when you show up to any event that you're at. But yeah, it's
I went to a I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
oh no,
off. I
good.
went to a Bergdorf Goodman's. I used to work trade shows, and I was working a trade show at the Javits Center. And the first watch that I remember grailing was like a 50s era fluted bezel uh, date just.
Oh
Remember
yeah,
seeing it on someone's arm. It was like an old country guy. I used to work in like high fluting restaurants and stuff before I got into my career. And I remember just being like gobsmacked by the old like 50s era date just. And also that guy came in with a Jacob and Co. that was insane. That gonna keep it PG for the podcast, but there was intercourse happening on the
yeah,
watch face to keep track of the seconds. My mind was blown, and it had like a little cuckoo door that opened, and it would
yeah,
like show it, and then the cuckoo door closed. It was insane. This guy had so many cool watches, but the 50s era date just, I was just like, man, that's the one. And I was at the Javits Center in New York. This is maybe 2011 or something like that for a trade show, and selling leather goods at the time, handmade leather goods out of Texas, and uh, stopped into Bergdorf Goodman's, got a card. I still have the card from that trip,
oh
but
wow,
was they had the 50s era date just, and I remember looking at it. I was 19 or something like that. This was like I said, first grail,
yeah.
and was just like, man, this is insane. Anyway, when you said walking around New York like that, I just remembered having like my first real, come to Jesus moment with a watch when I saw it in Bergdorf Goodman's.
Yeah. No, it's the little things, bro. You be like I still know I know right now the watch that made me first notice watches, and it wasn't enough for me to like really go off and find it, but I don't know if you've ever seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so Steve Martin's wearing a Piaget polo,
Oh,
and
cool. I'll have to
it's
go
the
back and look at
first bro, if I ever find this thing, I don't even care what I gotta do. I mean,
that.
if I gotta sell feet pics, whatever.
I'll
I'll
buy them, dude.
Yeah, I'll
I'll buy
start
your
an
feet pics.
OnlyFans and put my
Hell
feet out
yeah.
there because that watch is so beautiful, man. It's got the tri-stripes on it, and,
Yeah,
I just remember seeing that as a little kid because I was probably, like, 12 when that movie came out,
yeah.
and I remember seeing that going, like, because I was kind of a poor kid, man, so I mean,
Yeah,
not
same here.
kind of, I was a poor kid in,
Same
Southern
here, yeah.
California poor, which is a little bit different, but
Right.
I remember seeing that going, like, "Bro, that's if I ever get something like that, that's when I knew I made it. I made it."
I I was a bit I was a guitar player growing up and, still am, casually. And John Mayer was a huge influence. Of course, Stevie
Yeah,
Ray Vaughan being from Texas, and then John Mayer ripped off of Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I mean that in a good way. And John Mayer kind of brought watches to me at like maybe 16 or 17 or something. And I remember the one that stood out from like it was one of his first watch videos. He talked about the IWC Big Pilot that he had, like an
yeah,
OG one from Germany from the 40s. And I was like, wow, like what does that watch cost? I went and looked and I was just like, oh, okay, that's untouchable, for forever. But yeah, it's interesting. A little like I would love to hear everyone's origin story on like what it was. I had my dad Seiko or whatever, and then like John Mayer, and just kind of along the way, just all these little influences of like finding a watch striking. It's such a good feeling.
yeah, it is. It's when you It's funny, man. You run across something, and sometimes it's something you didn't even think you would even find enjoyable, and then when you see it in the metal or whatever, you're like, "Oh, wow." Like, I have a totally new impression of this timepiece.
Yeah,
But and this is a watch enthusiast podcast by all means, but we're here to talk about your company and you and how you got there. So why don't you just give us some background and like and you, who you are, and how you ended up with gridbase.net?
absolutely. Um, Background on me, goodness, uh, forever bored, forever bored of everything, and constantly chasing new experiences and new feelings. Like my wife and I were talking about it the other day, and I just want like I saw a guy today that was on a moped with no helmet, and he was just riding his motorcycle. Like, man, I like what a beautiful captured feeling. you know? But
Yeah.
I see time like that. I see space like that, and when the right song is playing, I think songs are like the way that, we decorate time. So when the right song's playing in a particular moment, dude, I will just get absolutely, awestruck by feelings. So anyway, I get bored regularly, and I love these feelings and kind of chase these feelings throughout life in a good way. So, very present and like very happy with where I'm at, but kind of always I want that feeling, that tangible feeling. You can
Yeah.
almost reach out of like you see a dad at a boat dock unloading with his family or something, and you're like, man, how does that feel? It's so cinematic to me. I don't know
Yeah.
if everyone looks at life that way, but I certainly do, and I remember, like I mentioned, I was a guitar player, and as a kid would just tear apart all the electronics from my amps and pedals and stuff like that. Had no idea what I was doing, but I just wanted to know. I wanted to know what was in there. What is this button? When I press this button and it makes this noise, how does that work? Just forever have been like that, And I thought that I was going to be a musician, actor, and so I got an agent and I got a manager, and I moved out to Los Angeles when I turned 18 in December. I moved to LA in February, and I was out there for my coming of age years, after leaving the house. And I did okay. I did some commercials and some voiceover work and whatever. But ultimately, that path didn't work out. My management structure changed, and things got really weird. And something that was interesting about that time was it was the shift between social media existing and not existing. And
Mhm.
at the time, all of everyone's manager and agent like the rule was that the historical rule was do not put your stuff online. Don't have a YouTube. Don't That was every manager said that. Every manager and every agent was like, don't have a YouTube, delete your Instagram, because you didn't want casting agents to find something out about you the same way you would do for a job interview now or whatever. If you're going for a serious job, you kind of pull that stuff off. That was the same sentiment back then. And it's crazy because like there was other people back then who decided, no, I'm going to go all the way with social media, and those are the Jake Pauls and the Logan Pauls and like all the big social media people of now are the ones who kind of saw what was happening back then. But if you were listening to your manager or whatever back then, they were telling you not to do that. And little did we know that that's what was ultimately like now you'll get a role because you have a million followers. That is
Yeah.
your resume now. And so anyway, it was a very interesting time to be a young man out there and to be doing that. And I just found it distasteful. The biggest thing I found distasteful and why I left was because um, I enjoyed my time out there. I had an awesome time. I had a motorcycle when I was out there and just cruised the PCH and like did as much as I could possibly do, soaking up the California sun. And then I got to a point where I got really, really close on some big jobs, and then I wouldn't get them because it would come down to like some little split hairs thing. Well, the family we casted was all, they look a certain way and you are a little darker than them. So it wasn't about my merit,
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
my ability to get the role. And I'm talking about this would come up multiple times for large production, Viacom, MTV, Disney, large productions where I would get to screen testing or I would get to whatever, which for those who don't know, screen testing is like that's it. If you can get through screen testing, you got the gig, now you're set. And I would get up to these points and then would lose it for some particular reason. And I just got so jaded by that. And I was like, you know what? I want to be a part of a career field where my merit cannot be subjective.
Yeah.
I want what I'm doing. Like it's obvious that he's good at that. And it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. That guy's the best. And I didn't really know what that was, but I definitely left California feeling that way. And then like I said, I had a motorcycle in California, got rid of it, came back to the States, picked up another bike. Family was begging me to get off the bike, so I got a car, totaled the car, ended up on a bicycle, and that's how I was commuting around. Like shortly after I got back, loved it to death. The bike, I went to the bike shop and got it on the bus, and I left the bike shop. I paid my last $250 or whatever for the bike, and it broke down like 3 times on the way home. And so I fixed it and like just kind of kept on rolling through with it. And when I was fixing it on my way home, I think it was like an 8 or 10 mile ride. It rained, kind of flat, and it was like this really crazy experience. But I kept fixing the bike to get home, and I had this like ha moment that I needed to be a mechanic. And I was like, man, I really love this. So I was a
Yeah.
shop rat for years at bicycle shops until I finally became a bicycle mechanic. Went to the Bicycle Mechanic Institute in Oregon, in Ashland, Oregon, got my degree there, got a job at a really nice shop in Dallas that was the shop for the Fiat race team,
Oh,
and did
wow.
that at a really high level. And then ultimately met a guy there who I had no idea who he was. I was just kind of helping him out. And he was like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I really want to be an aviation mechanic." That's what my dad was. My dad passed when I was young. So I didn't get the opportunity to get to be in aviation like how I was when I was a kid because my dad would pick me up. We'd fly around. I lived on tarmacs as a kid, and my dad would let me crawl through the belly of F-16s when they had the engine out. And those were all like core memories of mine. I loved aviation, but it's not really something you can just kind of do, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, he gave me a shot and I went and worked for him. And then I went to A&P school, finished that, got a job in aerospace. So really, I've been a tech my whole life leading up to grid base. And of course, now I do that in conjunction with my aerospace job. But I've loved being a tech. I've gotten the opportunity to work on some really cool stuff from an aviation standpoint, but also from vehicles and motorcycles and stuff too. I worked at an LS performance shop for a while, and got to do a lot of really fun LS performance work, hot rod stuff, and worked in some old vintage shops too, working on like 30s hot rods and gassers, and so I've gotten to be around a lot. Aviation's far and away my favorite, but that's my professional background and kind of how I got there. Hopefully, it's not too aloquacious.
No, that's I think that's the best thing about interviewing anybody, man. Is like you're meeting them at a certain point in time, right, in their
Right.
story. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
always joke around, like we joke around at work all the time. When someone gets a little like up on their high horse,
Mhm.
we'll be like, "Oh, that's funny, bro, because everything you've done in your life has led to us being in the same cubicle right here, right now." You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And then
Right.
sometimes
Sum
sometimes
total
that's a
good.
yeah, sometimes that's a lift up for some people because they'll be like, "Oh, man," it's like, "No, man, you've worked really hard. You're here," and you tell them, he or she, you're like, "Hey, it's only a step in another direction if you wanna go, or it's just a stop or another chapter in your life," right?
Yeah.
Like, and all that experience, man, leads to where you are now, and, that's gridbase.net. So tell us
I
tell us everything
I
behind it that you wanted.
I will, and I wanna say too that I remember being younger and asking people, like, I would hear them say that they had a job that I thought was interesting, and I'd be like, "How'd you get that?" And they would always tell some impossible story that was unrepeatable, and I would always be so irritated by that as a young man. I think because I was homeschooled, but like even still, the institution prevails. And like I thought that like you were supposed to do this, and this, and get this kind
Yeah,
of job. And so I was always asking people, "Oh, well, how'd you end up doing that?" And they would tell me some story that was just like, I'm like, "Well, shit."
yeah,
And now it's crazy to be on the other side of like I have that story, and no young man has asked me, and I'm not old enough to be able to like have that experience. At only 30, but like when I'm gonna be disheartened whenever a young man asks me like where I'm at or whatever, and I'm gonna
yeah,
have to be like, damn, dude, all right, so here's the thing. It's not repeatable. You gotta just follow your own path. And like hopefully I can give the
yeah,
best advice by that way. But I really, really love my job professionally in aerospace, and I really love my job in serving my customers with grid base. And I'm very fortunate. And it all just happened by one common thing, which was I followed what interested me. And I
yeah,
think that's like the most important thing is you have to follow what interests you. It's going to be hard, it's going to be uninteresting at times, but you have to always just kind of gravitate towards what interests you, not what's going to make the most money, not what's going to like impress people, not what's going to make you feel anything. Just like you just have to follow what interests you, and that's it, and follow that relentlessly, and then naturally you'll end up with what you're supposed to be around because you're
yeah,
surrounded yourself with what's interested you. That's the only common ground between everything that I've done in life. Is I was interested in bicycles, or I was interested in acting, or I was interested in cars and airplanes and like all this stuff. And it was like I think that's one level of it. The other level of it is that like because I didn't have my biological father growing around, I had a stepfather growing up, and he is the best gentleman ever. I love him to death. Nothing is to take away from him. However, he was starkly different from my biological father, who was rowdy, adrenaline junkie, mechanic, and my mom, when she remarried, she remarried a safer, spouse that wasn't so
yeah,
crazy. And so I have a lot of respect for him, dude. He took us camping. He had a lot of what I learned. Everything I learned was from that man. So I've immense amount of respect, but there was still something in that relationship where I didn't get the mechanic adrenaline side of stuff.
yeah,
And so I kind of sought it out as an adult. I was looking to replace, like, okay, well, if my dad had been here, I would have learned how to do this. And so I
yeah,
kind of like adopted all these other things and put them in my life. And it's interesting because my father died at 33, and I'm 30 now, and I think by the time I hit 33, in some element, I'm going to surpass any knowledge that he would have ever been able to have had.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting thing, and I'm not sure how that's gonna affect me when I get to that point, but it's something I think about when, like, subconsciously, that's something I've been chasing, and then now I'm gonna get to the point where I'm older than my dad ever was, and have lived more life than my dad ever did, and that's a really weird thing that I don't think, a lot of people think about, and, something I think about weekly, but, to get to the grid base thing and how we started grid base, much
Well, real
similar.
quick, Jake,
Yeah, yeah,
let me
yeah.
bring up an interesting point, right?
Sure.
And I think it's important for my audience to hear where you talk about interest, right? In there's one word that you did not say, and it's a word I hear people use all the time, and I think it's a hot catchphrase or whatever. But you said interest and not passion. And I've had this
Mhm.
conversation with people before, right?
Yeah.
Where they're like, "Oh, I just want to follow what I'm passionate." I'm like, "Well, I mean, dude, passion comes and goes,
Yeah.
right?" Like you talked about the Jack Mason Dr. Pepper. You're going to
Right.
score one on the secondary market
Yeah.
because someone's passion for Dr. Pepper is
Right.
not what they thought it was. And they're
Mhm.
going to put it on eBay and you're going to score it at a discounted price, right? And then your
Right.
interest in Dr. Pepper is going to score you a kick-ass watch down the road, right?
Yeah,
And
I may argue with the discounted price. I think those watches will go up in value, but yes, hopefully, yes.
yeah, and then but it's like, in my line of work what I do, so I still work for the Navy, but I've learned through my life, like, my story's similar to yours, like, I didn't have my real father. I had an adopted father, and he was probably the opposite, like, the dude just wasn't meant to be a dad, I guess, and, so I leaned heavy on the stuff that I intrinsically was interested in, and for me, that was painting, drawing, listening to music. Like, you talked about how, like, sometimes you see a moment, and do you see life that way? I can
Yeah,
give you an example. In the movie Tron Legacy, when he's outrunning the cop on his motorcycle, and they're playing "The Son of Flynn" by Daft Punk, that movie moment is one of the best movie moments in the history of cinema. I will argue anyone, anytime, because there is such a feeling in that moment to where they sync that film video with the audio so perfectly. It's like a cyber noir, like,
yeah,
it's beautiful, right? And it's the reason why I do a lot of the videos I do on Instagram for the Friday night sleep reels, because it's like, hey, I was inspired by, like, I want to make stuff that has a moment, a capturing moment for people, right?
yeah,
But you talk about interest and you never said passion. And I just think it's important for the audience to hear that the things that interest you will always interest you, because
yeah,
most things don't have a finite end to them, right?
right.
Like, you're gonna start out somewhere and you're gonna end up, and you can be 90 years old and you didn't learn everything you could ever possibly learn because it's impossible.
Yeah,
And that will stay you longer. And then I think that you can be more successful following your interest than following your passion, because I literally have made a living because I just like to solve problems.
yeah,
Give me a problem, I'll try to solve it, you know?
definitely. I think you can equate at my core values, what I would equate it to exactly like from a word structure standpoint is the difference between happiness and fulfillment. Like,
Yeah,
I'm way more interested in chasing fulfillment than I am in chasing happiness because to me, happiness comes and goes. That's a beautiful up and down of life. I enjoy sadness too. I learn more during sadness and loss. I learn
yeah,
way more during that than I do during happy times. So I'm grateful for those moments tremendously. But one thing that does not change with me is my fulfillment. My fulfillment cup is infinite and it's constantly being fulfilled. It's constantly being just added to because it brings me joy and fulfillment and that doesn't go anywhere. So my happiness may come and go, but the things that fulfill me, the
yeah,
things that feel fulfilling, that's just me at my core. So I
yeah,
think that's probably why I use the word interest instead of passion unconsciously because I'm way more interested in fulfillment than I am happiness. Passion about something and having that passion fulfilled makes you feel happy, but interest in following that interest and getting the results of being interested in something like that equates to fulfillment. That's way
yeah.
more what I'm after.
And I always tell people that key word of fulfillment, the key part is fill, right?
Yeah,
And that's how you build a solid foundation, man. Like, you have a foundation of stone and not made of reeds or clay, right? Like,
right.
you as you do that, you become a different person, and you find yourself around other people that are similar in that, right? They're not chasing the short stuff. They are firm in who they are, they're confident in who they are, and that allows, I think, for much more genuine relationships and much more, and not even beneficial relationships from like a what's in it for me, but just kind of like you benefit from being around other people like that because often they went in search of this truth or information, whatever, and you learn from them because
Yeah,
you know,
hippies would call it alignment. You're in alignment,
yeah,
with the people that are around you, what have you. Yeah, I think hippies would call it alignment. Texans might just call it good old folk. We just surround
yeah,
ourselves with the right people. But
yeah,
it's just like it's being in alignment with your life, and that comes, dude. Here's the thing, though. That comes at a cost of not having a lot of people around you, and I'm
yeah,
perfectly okay with that. Some people want a big gaggle of people. I got five, and
yeah,
those five though are solid. It's the
yeah,
most solid five, and a lot of them are very different. They're not like me. That's not why they're in my five. They're in my five because they all hold one thing common, which is that they are absolutely, fully, authentically who they are, interested in what they're interested in, and able to speak about it at a high level. So I want
yeah,
I want to hear your opinion about that thing, and I want to hear it differ from mine, and I want you to be able to like extrapolate it for me so I can experience, because to me that's like we talk about it, these experiences and stuff. That's, yeah, how I get to experience your side of life. It's like I'm getting to
yeah,
live two. I only get my one, really, but like to
yeah,
hear about it like that. My wife and I do this too. When we have conversations or when we have arguments or something we got to talk about, we get down to it on that level before, like, to resolve it, because it's just so important that I want to know my wife. Like, my wife
yeah,
doesn't take aspirin when she gets headaches. The other night I was like, why? It's irritating.
mhm,
I'm always like, hey, take an aspirin, and like I told her, I'm like, I'm gonna stop telling you to take an aspirin because you're an adult and you can do that whenever you want. But I can only do that if you share with me the reason why you don't do that on your own.
yeah,
And I also want to share with you why it's important to me that I think you do that. And so we have this whole moment. We end up with this much deeper understanding, and like a much, now it's not like I never have to ask her to get an aspirin again. She'll take one on her own. I know I'm heard. She knows she's heard. The end. That's like my relationships with everybody is like that. And not a lot of people are committed to that level of what it is accountability, first and foremost. To be accountable for the way you feel, to be accountable for the words you say, to be accountable for your character and your interests and all of that. You have to be
yeah.
really authentic and really accountable to do that. And it's uncomfortable for most people. But man, I love when I find them though, because they're rare gems. But yeah, anyway,
No, I know exactly what you mean, and you talk about like time, right? I mean, it's I'm always amazed when someone has like 30 quote unquote friends. It's like,
it's
dude, there's
crazy.
only 24 hours in a day.
It's crazy, bro.
I got wife, I got kids, I got a
Yeah,
dog, right?
yeah,
And my
yeah.
dog's ride or die. Like my dog is right. Like that little dude deserves every single amount of time. Like I felt bad today because like I came home today, right? And
Right.
I had to get a bunch of stuff done real quick. And he's sitting there looking at me like, bro, you haven't rubbed my belly yet. Like he's looking at me like, what is wrong with you? And he's
Yeah.
a Shiba, so he has like really serious eyebrows. And he's just like looking at me like, oh, you're dead to me. You're dead to me for the next hour. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. So I
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
But so gridbase.net, we're
Yes.
there. We're going to talk about it because I think it's a whole cool scene, but I want you to talk about it because it's your baby.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm gonna speak sparingly on it, and I'm gonna lean on you for input and direction, okay? Because I mean, I could really go off on this for 18 hours straight, right? So I'm gonna avoid doing that, stick to the high points, but I'm gonna keep kind of guiding you into another question. So we'll do it that way. But to give you kind of the how it started, where it's at, and where we're going type thing. Uh, Grid Base started about a year ago today. Uh, my wife was pregnant with our son, and I was looking for the ultimate contingency in the event that there was no hospital to deliver him at. Of course, we've all heard stories about someone having to deliver a baby on the side of the road or at home because of one reason or the other. And I didn't really have that resource. And I knew about internet in a box stuff because I used to live in a van, and when I lived in the van, kind of like softly got into ham radio and stuff. And so I knew about ham radio, internet in a box, sphere, and it was mostly like it was only a DIY sphere, and really complicated stuff. I had no background with computers. I was just an iPhone guy, download apps. That was my whole like internet experience. No computers, no nothing. And but when it came to like my wife having a son and our son and me needing to like have a contingency for this whole giving birth situation, I was like, okay, well now it's time to do the internet in a box thing, you know. And so I dusted off my computer out of the garage, sat down and kind of got to it, bought a Raspberry Pi, and was just grinding my brain through 14-year-old videos of guys who spoke English barely, who were from India, who were just trying to extrapolate these concepts to understand how this stuff worked. And like I said, I'm a wrench turner guy, so problem solving is easy for me, and like chain of operation, like I'm pretty good at understanding big picture stuff like that, but never in the technical sphere. It just was not my jam. I just would have rather done anything else. But a man with a why can conquer any how, and loose paraphrase there. But yeah, had a big why, and so the how didn't matter. I was going to figure it out, and got like a working prototype, and I thought I was done. I was like, cool, I'm done. And just needed a little more, and I kind of wanted to add this. And as I got into it, I just found more and more and more and more and more options, and like resources, and it just kept spiraling kind of. And takes us to like November, end of November of last year, and I posted a TikTok about it because my wife said to. I had really not ever posted a TikTok prior. Was not even on it to consume media. Like TikTok just was not my thing at all. And really, social media in general wasn't. I think I had like 40 followers on Instagram, and it was all like friends, and that was it. My wife was like, "Make a TikTok post," but I did. It went crazy. I think it was cresting now like 1 million views and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments, and just went really nuts. And it was kind of in that moment, combined with everything that was leading up to that I realized, like, man, there's probably a lot of other guys out here like me who would love to do a project like this, but just don't have like the technical acumen or the time to be able to like sit down and figure this out. And it was a lot to figure out, from the 3D printing to the programming to the what resources were available out there, to what boxes everything fit in and what hardware you needed. I mean, I remember when I was plugging in a cable one time, it was an SPI data cable or a visual like ribbon cable that went to the screen, and I like had no idea how to do it. And so just all this weird stuff that most people don't know how to do. I certainly didn't, and none of my friends did. And we're all sharp cookies to some extent. And I was just like, there's more people out there that need this. Of course, I had the interest on TikTok blowing up at the time. And that set us off for our first run of 14, which was all pre-orders. People that just didn't know me from Adam, dude, just trusted me on a guy on TikTok who made a post, one post, and just sent me. At the time, they were $1,400 because I hadn't gotten costs down. I knew nothing about business really. And so they sent me their money. I was holding 14 people's $1,400 money, and was just like, oh my god. And so I just kind of blew the garage out and started making them, and delivered all of them on time when I told everybody I was going to deliver them.
Nice.
Had no failures. Everybody was really happy with it. And in that course of time, developed some really, really great relationships with people who knew a lot more than I did. One of them was a CEO of a big tech company who's now like one of the advisors of Gridbase. And he's just really helped me, asking me questions that got me thinking, and streamlining things, and just stuff I knew nothing about. And he's been so good with, man, he'll break down his time for me anytime and just let me pick his brain. He's just an awesome, awesome guy. And have kind of a few of those. And now Gridbase is sitting on top of multiple products, for multiple people. We've got the computer that's obviously like what we call the base station, which is a full off-grid internet in a box communication system that's decentralized, autonomous, and collaborative, and it is secure as something can be. And when I say secure, I mean there's no microphones in it, there's no GPS data if you don't want there to be. There's just no way to remote listen or access the device if you choose for that not to be something that's done to the device. It's small enough to put in a Faraday bag so you can protect it from EMPs or any type of phishing that might be going on. So anyway, it's an incredible product, and we've brought the cost, or should I say, the retail down from 1,400 to 999, which is huge, keeping the same profit margin. So as a company, we're going to be in business for a long time, and we were able to kind of pass down that cost savings to the customer. So where we started off at 1,400, now it's 999, and that's where it's going to stay. So have that. For the person who doesn't want to get involved at that crazy of a level, we've got Pocket, and Pocket is as easy as turn it on, connect it to your phone over Wi-Fi, and you have the exact same off-grid internet base that's on the base station. That's the 999 unit. You've got it now for $249, and that's all it is. So if you had no cell service, if you had no internet, if you're at a cabin, if you're in the middle of nowhere, you don't need access to satellites or GPS or any of that kind of stuff. You just turn the device on. All the information is locally hosted on the device, and you're using Wi-Fi to transfer that data back and forth between the device and your iPhone, so you can have all of your internet things, uh, right there. And when I say internet things, what I mean is it's got all of Wikipedia, the entirety of it, searchable. It comes up just like regular Wikipedia page does. Over 60,000 books on it, ranging every topic: summer and winter, Marine Corps field survival manuals, knot tyings, skinning and field dressing, canning, medical. Of course, like I started off saying that it was like a device because I wanted to be able to give birth in the field, basically. So, of course, it's got all the resources for that. It's got searchable stack exchanges, which is basically like a Google on a topic. So there's a stack exchange for vehicle maintenance or aviation or programming or language learning. So if you had a question about a 1995 Ford F-150, you could go into the vehicle stack exchange and search that, and you would get the top 100 questions and answers as it relates to all the mechanical aspects of a Ford F-150 with diagrams and hyperlinks and all those kinds of things. So when I say all of the internet, or people might have a hard time understanding what that means, but really it's just different from a PDF in the sense that you're not just scrolling through a PDF. You're actually interacting with it much like you would a web page where you can search things and kind of get more information that way. And I think the best thing about it is that it can be utilized by multiple people at once. A big focus was that it was collaborative, because you might be in a cabin with five people, and they have, two of them might be playing Scrabble, one of them might be fixing something, whatever. Wanted it to be able to be like used like the internet, where multiple people
Yeah.
could share, as opposed to just like if you downloaded 1,000 gigs of PDFs, and kept them on a hard drive, only one person can look at it at a time. Or if you had a medical emergency or something like that, multiple people could be researching, the solution to a medical problem at once. So it's really important that it's collaborative, and it supports at a, I shouldn't say at a maximum, but best optimal range is about 10 people at a time. So, you have 10 people at a time being able to come up with solutions to problems, or being able to entertain themselves. There is entertainment on it, music videos and all that kind of stuff. That's all there on the device. So, kind of turn it back to you now, and unload any of that packet of information there.
Oh, no, I think it's excellent. I'm gonna pull up the here on the screen real quick. I got the base station pulled up. I think it's pretty I think it's awesome, man. And I think why this is relevant, especially for like a watch enthusiast podcast, right, is that, man, you've been around watches enough to know. Everyone's like, "I need a tool watch, man. I need a
Yeah.
tool." Right? Well,
Right.
here's a freaking tool. This
Yeah.
is this is a, excuse my French, mother bleeping tool, right? Like, it's everything that you want at the same, and I told you a funny story earlier. It's like, I used to have a Gen 4 Ultima back in the day, right? 2007 Ultima. And, I was newly divorced, like, I was scraping pennies, right? And I was doing a lot of stuff on the car myself, right? So, like, the
Right.
rotors, the brake pads, brakes, and all that stuff. And I made a joke to you. I was like, "Man, it was such a pain in the ass to try to use my phone when I was changing out the cabin air filter." And if you've never changed out a cabin air filter on a 2007 Nissan Altima, you've never lived life, right? Um, the it I th When I first started in the Navy, we had these things called oxygen breathing apparatuses, and they were old school breathing devices that used canisters that actually pumped pure oxygen into your lungs, right? Via a chemical reaction. Pretty sure it's not the greatest thing for your body, but they had little rods inside them, inside a canister, and it was concave, right? And you would adjust these guide rods to make the canister go on properly, right? Or else it wouldn't seat. And so if you have hands like mine, like I have a 7.5-inch wrist, if you had hands like mine, every time you went in there, you cut the crap out of your hands, right? They would just be
Yeah.
bloody. You'd have bloody knuckles. So like your chief and then would know if you were doing your maintenance or not, because if you didn't have bloody knuckles, you weren't doing your OBA maintenance, right?
Right. Right.
Th That was the worst thing I'd ever experienced hand-wise until I changed out that cabin air filter, and trying to use my phone at the same time was just a pain in the butt. And then
Yeah.
the second I saw it, I was like, "Man, I could have put this, like, on the floorboard of my car. I coulda had it pulled up. The
Right.
the way it's shaped, I could have, like, put it against the wall of my car, and I coulda just, quickly reviewed the video or quickly reviewed the Haynes manual, whatever's on there, and then kept it moving, right?"
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to jump in right there and just say that one of the programs that the base station has on it is you can copy any YouTube link you want, and it'll automatically download that to your home folder. So if you knew that you were going to go out into the field and maybe you wanted a video of like how to break down your rifle or whatever as a reference, you could very easily go in, download that video. It's super seamless, copy paste the link, and then you could build a library that way of videos that were important to you for field maintenance. This is all something. I'm a tool guy. Like I mentioned, I'm an aviation mechanic, been a mechanic my whole life. I love tools, and this is a tool for the tech age, for the tool guy, not the tech guy. I mean, I definitely do have some tech clients, but for the most part, this is for tool guys. This is for trying to cut out all of the craziness of like programming and stuff and deliver you a turnkey tool, where you may not be a tech guy and you don't have to be to get value and use out of the tool. There's definitely an adjustment. It's something to learn. It's a new piece of tech that leverages old technology. So it's kind of a little bit of a learning curve, but it's a part of what I do every day is I do walkthroughs with customers. And so I'll sit down, and a part of what you're paying for when you buy a base station or any of my products is at least an hour long walkthrough for me to sit down and kind of go through, hey, here's how to use it. And I don't know of any other product these days where you get that level of customer service. And I really pride myself on the customer service that I bring to people because I understand who my customer is and I understand what they need. And I know what I would have wanted if I was a customer of this type of product. And so it is a tool. It's a tech tool for the modern age that if all other tech things fail that we love to take advantage of, our iPhones or whatever, you have something in the event that that is to fail you, that these tools we rely on that are not that are centralized and proprietary, this is something where it's your own. And on the timekeeping aspect, there's a program within it to get time from GPS. So if you're an accuracy guy, you're gonna love it because you can plug in the GPS and it uploads the time across the system to give you the exact time for Zulu and your current location based off GPS coordinates. So time's really important when you're talking about radio, which of course the device has a ton of radio features as well that maybe we can get into later. But time's really, really critical for all kinds of functionality, and satellite Doppler shifts. Knowing when satellites are coming if you're trying to download radio. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
weather over radio. You got to understand Doppler shift in time. And so, anyway, it's a clock too at its simplest. The simplest tool. But I just wanted to jump in there with the video thing and be like, yeah, it does that too.
Oh, no, it's awesome, and I have the Pocket pulled up right now, which to me is probably now the base is the coolest, right? The base, I look at it, I think of Aliens, the automated turret machine gun computers, but the Pocket, especially the picture with the person's hand holding it, I think that's, like, the truest representation of a tool done the right way. Like, this is something you could shove in your pocket, you could put in a pack pocket, inside your jacket, whatever you want, and you
Yeah,
have a ton of information there, um, that A, doesn't have a bunch of bloatware on it, doesn't have a bunch of that, you know what I
none,
mean?
none.
It's just something that's really
No,
cool.
no subscription, no bloatware, no ads, no none of that. All the nonsense that we have to put up with to get information these days is just none of that. And whether you're on an airplane, whether just whatever the situation is, whether you don't want to compromise having your device connected to random Wi-Fi or whatever. I mean, this is something that you can be sure is a secure way to get information when getting information is the priority.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Pocket, and I got to give credit to S3 cases. Blake over there at S3 Cases, they make watch cases and stuff too. So
Oh,
got to
really?
check them out. Yeah, S3 Cases. It's a family-owned company. I think it's second or third generation, and they're based out of Denver, Colorado. They do all their own injection molding and everything like that over there. So they're very compliant. They do sell to the government, and they just make fantastic cases. I'm probably randomly one of the foremost experts on cases because I've had to do so much testing. I've done everything from Taiwan, China, Texas made, Denver made. I have a ton of cases, and I've experienced them all. And the S3 cases, not only from the product that they produce readily made that you can go and purchase on their site, which they do have a ton of those, but even their ability to custom manufacture cases, foam cuts, all that kind of stuff. They're just far and away one of the most professional companies I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And Blake over there, he's like 25, and it's the guy who owns its son, and he's just hungry, man. He's hungry, and he's getting all the contracts that he can get, and And so, yeah, they just do really, really good work all the way around. So check out S3 cases. But they helped make Pocket not only take it to the next level for ruggedness, water tightness, all of that. Of course, it's a rated case, but they also just the form factor of their cases look absolutely beautiful. So have to give them their credit because it
Awesome.
is due.
Yeah, and anyone that's looking at this when it posts, and this is going to post on Thursday, there's a hyperlink right here for S3, and I'll put the S3 I saved them. I'll put a non-sponsor, but I'll put a link on the show notes for it, so people can go check them out too. Because I
Cool.
just took a quick look at it, the T2500 case. I've
Oh
been looking
yeah.
at cases too, man. It's maybe we can get a. I don't know if Blake's into watches, but maybe we can get him on here one day to talk about it.
Blake is into watches, man. And I know he would love to talk about it. You should definitely reach out to him, and I'll
Yeah,
reach out to him and kind of be a matchmaker there for y'all too. Because he's a real interesting guy to talk to. Young man, dude. I thought he was like 45. We know we did a whole deal. We did a whole multi-thousand-dollar deal for tons and tons of cases, and the whole
yeah,
time I was dealing with him, I thought he was in his mid 40s or something like that. It wasn't until a phone conversation the other day where he and I were just kind of brainstorming and chatting that he let go that he was 25, and I was like, "What?" But anyway, no, he's an excellent character, man, and I'm sure he'd love to be on. But he is a watch guy, and I know that he's a fantastic businessman, and I don't think age should really be brought up in the context of that course because
no,
there's been many young fantastic businessmen, but the fact that he's existing today at 25 years old, as hungry as he is and doing it as well as he is, it's just tremendous, and I love to know that people like him exist out there. It gives me hope for the world.
yeah. I might have to check out and get myself a travel watch case. I mean, I got some watch rolls, but nothing
Oh,
like a
guess
good case.
what? Oh, guess what? Oh, guess what, dude?
What?
He S3 Cases did the cases for Sanguine.
Oh, really?
Yes, I don't know if anyone out there's a Sanguine fan,
Dun
but
dun
they did.
dun.
Yeah, dum dum dum.
You
But
heard it here first.
but yeah, S3 did the cases for Sanguine, and they did a private label deal. And yeah, I don't think that's a secret by any means, but just as a testament, I think Sanguine is an interesting company and does some good work. And so it's just cool that they got a little match made going on over there. So they're integrated. They're integrated into the watch
That's
thing.
awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, so I normally have a whole slew of questions I ask, and I try to keep these to about an hour, and we're at 52 minutes. But I got
Already? Goodness.
one really, yeah. It's man, time flies when you're having fun. Um, I have one question though, and I think it's important for veterans or anyone that watches the podcast. But it's geared towards especially if my fellow veterans or active duty can listen in, or anyone that's just you've built a company essentially, Jake, from the ground up, right?
Yes.
And we've talked about interest and greater than passion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you've seen a need. The need for you was personal, like, hey, if my wife pops this child out, I need to figure, and we're in the middle of nowhere, I need to know how to do it, right?
Right.
And what would be one piece of advice you would give to anyone that's because between you and me, you're relatively young to me
Oh yeah.
still. I'm
Yeah.
pushing
I feel that
50.
way.
Yeah, I'm pushing 50. I'm young at heart, but I mean, like, the truth of the matter is I'm pushing 50, right?
Right.
And what would be one piece of advice that you would give someone that is on the fence about starting a business around something that they're highly interested in? I just double D that interested too. I don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to keep it simple, it will not work if you're not passionate about it. It just won't. I mean, if you're like me, it won't work if you're not passionate about it, or if you're not passionate about it for the right reasons. At the end of the day, the number one reason that I'm into this is because I want to provide for my family. I'm highly passionate about that, and I want to buy my time back. I don't want to have to trade my time for money for the rest of my life. And I'm more passionate about that than I am about anything else. So it could have been grid base, it could have been yard mowing, but you have to have your priorities in order. And for me, my first priority is my relationship with God, and my second priority is taking care of my family. And with those two things being in proper alignment, it's really impossible for anything that I put my mind to fail. And so I think approaching it from that way, and it being able to accept criticism, and being able to accept failures and hard times, nothing worth having is going to come easy, period. And so I think just being ready for that, and having that kind of grit going into something is critical, whether it's yard mowing or whether it's a company like Gridbase. You know, whatever it is. I think that's definitely the most important thing. Other than that, I think it's from an actual business standpoint. If you want to get into it, workshopping your ideas, knowing how much time something is going to take, being reasonable about what you can sell it for. It's called a pro forma if you want to look it up if you don't know what it's called. But building yourself a pro forma for your business model is critical. And now with tools like ChatGPT and stuff like that, you can do a pro forma in like 5 minutes. You just give ChatGPT all the data of an idea, and then ChatGPT goes from there and gives you a pro forma. So it's really, really great to be able to leverage some of the tools that we have now to come up with stuff like that. Where in the past you would have had to have hired a legal team and a business advisor and all kinds of stuff. And ChatGPT can be that for you now. So I think being wise with the tools we have, leveraging those tools correctly, but none of that stuff is going to mean anything if you're not passionate about it for the right reasons, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think that passion or the interest is the base of it, right? You talk about leveraging technologies. You know, in the Navy for a long time, we used to do our communications during fires on, paper. We had
Yeah.
paper messages, and then we had little plastic boards you could write with a grease pencil on, right?
Yeah.
And then, man, the pushback when computers came out, people were losing their minds, bro.
It's
And I was like,
naturally,
"Look, yeah, there's a happy place, right? We still do the paper, we still do the plastic boards
right.
as backup, right? We don't lose that skill in case everything goes wrong with the computers. We still have that innate skill." And
Yeah.
then it was weird, man. People just really lose it, but I totally agree because, I'm gonna go check out Proforma and see what's up. Proforma and
Hey,
see what's up
do
with
you
it.
want to do a rapid fire? I'm going to rapid fire all these.
Yeah, screw it. Let's do it.
Let's do a rapid fire round. Okay, so what is a common myth about starting a company that you'd like to share? A common myth about starting a company that I'd like to share is that you have to have the whole idea fleshed out before you start. You don't. You're going to grow with that as time goes by. Look at any company, and where they are now is not where they started. So you don't. You need to workshop the idea enough to where you can mitigate risks, but you need to most importantly get started and don't suffer from analysis paralysis where you just analyze it to death and then you never actually start anything. Whether you know everything about it or not, it's time to get started now if that's something you feel like you should do. The other thing is, what is your biggest challenge in taking and maintaining this company, and how do I tackle it? My biggest challenge right now is time management. And what I mean by that is that I trade a lot of my time for customer service. And so I'm building a series of videos so that I can reference people to the video that would have been the same thing if I'd have spent an hour or 2 hours with them walking them through the device. So time management and making sure that I'm having the most effectual use of my time so that I can spend that time with my family and so that the customer gets something that they can reference back to over and over so that it's a better experience for them on the customer service side. The most important lesson that I've learned from running my company is simply that kind of what I was saying before, as far as just getting started. I knew nothing about computers or anything when I got started, and just the fact that I got started and put my feet on the ground and made it happen, is not something that I would have initially thought was how it would have worked. I thought I would have need to have done more pre-planning or stuff, but you got to work it as you go along. The most critical personality trait that someone needs to balance multiple projects, I would say, is to be able to have knowledge of self and to be able to communicate that knowledge of self well with the team that you have surrounding you. So, know why something feels the way that it feels and know how to be able to express that in a way to where your team can kind of keep you accountable, hold you to a high level of accountability so that you can progress forward in a positive manner, regardless of what the obstacle is. Uh, and in managing those multiple projects too, where ideally you have a team around you of people who can kind of maybe kickstart an idea or refine an idea or what have you. One piece of advice that I give to someone running a company, especially if they have a full-time day job, is to get rid of sleep. You don't need it. You can sleep like 4 hours or 6 hours and you'll be just fine. And one thing that I tell myself every morning when I'm groggy or whatever is just put your boots on. Just put your boots on. If you can get out of bed and just put your boots on, there's been hundreds of days where what was required was just putting my boots on. And so one piece of advice that I give to someone who has a full-time J job and they want to run a company is, guess what, dude, something's got to give, right? If you have to sacrifice something to get something, that's the nature of every religion, every tale of
Yeah.
time, is that sacrifice is required to gain. And so you have to figure out what you're going to sacrifice. Hopefully you're not going to sacrifice your family. If you're young, you have excess time, so leverage that time as much as you possibly can. The most influential mentor that I had during my company journey, I'm not going to name him, but it was the gentleman who came on early on and helped me out. The
Awesome.
underrated tools that's indispensable for running a company: ChatGPT, my legal team, my business advisor team, my financial and accounting team. Everybody in my entire team is ChatGPT, so I leverage ChatGPT to no end. Underrated tools that are if I could give a pre-company self one piece of advice, what would it be? it would be to focus more on content generation early on before you get busy with customer support. Because had I taken the time then to do the videos and stuff, it would have been easier for me to take that time that I had at the beginning and leverage it better. Kind of wish I would have done that early on. Um, when it comes to readers, what's your biggest pet peeve? Could you explain that question a little bit?
Oh, I must have missed the word. You got me. I was gonna say customers.
Oh, when it
Customers
comes
are
to customers,
clients.
what's my biggest pet peeve? Um, I have no pet peeve with any of my customers. I'm very fortunate that the people who are customers of GridBase are committed to the idea, committed to the reality, and I think the reality of what I'm building and what it is and what it's used for. But I think that has a lot to do with the way that I've prefaced, communicated the product. As an example, I really don't even let people buy a base station without like a 15-minute at least consultation to make sure it's the right tool for them. So I always make sure that the expectations are appropriate for the product. So that's my so I do that so that I can avoid pet peeves,
Yeah,
right? So I do it all on the front end, so to speak. You know, I
yeah.
take the frustrating part on the front end. And hey, if you're not my customer, I'm totally happy with that. I would rather 10 happy customers than 20 customers and half of them are satisfied, half of them are not, you know? So I just try and make sure that people have a good expectation coming into it to avoid pet peeves. So I do not have a pet peeve of my customers.
Awesome.
Future goals, just to make Gridbase more of a security one package solution. Not sure how that's going to happen. The best book you could possibly read is a book called Wisdom of the Native Americans. Go and try and find that book. It's absolutely indispensable. One question that I wish you would have asked me and how I would have answered, we'll have to save that one for the next podcast. My Grail piece is going to be that date just. And listeners can find me online at www.gridbase.net, or you can find me on Instagram or TikTok, gridbase.net, spelled out DOTNET. I also have a Patreon that's gridbase.net, and there I do a lot more in depth training and discussion of topics and ideas as it pertains to communication. And we didn't even touch radio, but radio is a real big part of what I do and what the base station does. And
Okay.
so, as you can see, some of these radios behind me. So, if you have questions about radio or anything like that, please follow up either in my email, info@gridbase.net, or via social media or any of the other ways you can reach out to me.
Awesome. Hey, well, let's touch base later, Jake, and then we can always do a radio episode and go in depth on that.
Let's do a radio
I have
episode.
no
That
problem,
sounds
man. I
fun.
wanna I wanna learn about radio too. Well, you got
Yes,
any
let's do it.
parting shots, Jake?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that the professionalism on this podcast is bar none. I appreciate it to no end. It's so nice to spend my time with someone who takes my time as seriously as I take it. And so, to come into a podcast like this and to just have you be beyond professional and above board in every way is such a breath of fresh air. So I just thank you for the
Oh,
platform. It's just a tremendous platform as a guest on it, and of course, as in listening to it. I do write for Recon Team Watch Blog, so maybe your listeners are familiar with Justin. So if you're interested in any articles, please visit Recon Team Watch Blog, and you can find more about it there. And thank you so much for giving us the platform. You have an excellent platform, and I'm honored to be on it. So parting
oh,
shots is
thank you.
just giving you your flowers because you definitely deserve them.
I appreciate it, Jake. Thank you very much. Shout out
Yes, sir.
Justin. Hope he's doing good
Yeah,
stuff in Texas.
he
And
will be.
hey, and like everyone, remember at watchrolling.com, you make the watch. The watch doesn't make you.
That's right.